All right, iPhone 5C and 5S. This is going to be an honest look at the comparison between these two phones. Apple just released these in fall of 2013. And this is, if you guys are fans of my reviews, you know that I'm not going to talk a lot about specs or sort of in-depth details of the technology. This is more about the user experience and how these phones compare to sort of each other and some of the other phones on the market today. These reviews are for the average user. They're for the person who doesn't know or doesn't care about whether their phone has 1 gig of RAM or 2 gigs of RAM or an A7 chip or an A6 chip. It's about how the phone looks, feels, and runs in your hand, and that's where I specialize my reviews for. So if you're interested in a technology-specific review, you're not going to find it here, so I'm going to jump right in. So what Apple have done here is that they've taken the iPhone 5 and put a plastic shell around it, and they've rebranded it as the iPhone 5C. And I'm serious when I say that. This has all the guts of the iPhone 5 inside of a plastic case loaded with iOS 7 on the inside. And so it is basically an iPhone 5. And when I say basically, I mean completely an iPhone 5. The only thing different is the outside plastic case. But that is also what makes it so brilliant and so lovable, is this wonderful plastic body that they put around it. It is fantastic. I have no other words other than it is a beauty and a joy to hold on to. It's very solid feeling. It doesn't have, I mean, you can sort of hear that it's a little bit hollow sounding, but it's not thin and cheap. It's not like a Samsung phone where it creaks and bends and twists in your hand. I mean, this is the way to make a plastic phone. I mean, leave it up to Apple to design something that is brilliant and beautiful and something that actually works well. This is probably the best plastic case I've ever seen on a phone. You know, the only downside is that you're limited to maybe 4 or 5 colors. I forget which ones they offer, but, you know, white, blue, green, yellow, and pink maybe. Regardless, it is the way to make a plastic case. I mean, the look, the feel, how this thing handles in your grip, it's a fantastic phone to use. But if you have an iPhone 5, there is very, very little reason for you to go out and get an iPhone 5C unless you absolutely have to get a plastic color case. Now, all those points being said, one of the reasons why I really like this case, or this sort of plastic build, is that I usually run my phones without any cases on them. And so for me, the ability to have a little bit of a color, a little bit of a personal expression, in addition to not having to use a case, is pretty nice. You know, Motorola has done this little bit of customization with their Moto X, and so, you know, HTC has some different color. Well, HTC has a black and a blue and a silver, you know, color scheme, and Nokia have definitely been doing different colored phones like this for a long time. So maybe Apple has taken a clue from Nokia here with their coloring of their new phones. But I really like this. I think they've gone out on a limb here with their colors here, and they've done a good job with it. So moving now to the 5S, I mean, this phone is Apple's brand new latest flagship, and so they've basically kept the same case design as the 5. They've changed the colors around a bit. This is the new space gray model, which, if you're familiar with the black iPhone 5, this is actually a little bit different. It's definitely more gray on the back, and they still have the black sort of edging and details around the outside of the case. But it's a different color than the standard black iPhone 5. Otherwise, everything is the same on this body as the 5 except for this dual LED flash, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we compare photos. But everything else is the same. Standard lightning port, speakers, SIM card tray, vibrate, power. I mean, it's the same. If you guys have seen the 5, you know what the 5S is going to look like. And so, you know, in terms of the heft and the feel between these two, the plastic of the iPhone 5C is actually, I find it a little bit nicer to hold on to. I mean, this premium build, you know, in the aluminum unibody on the 5S is nice, but it's a little bit too thin and sharp for me. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like it, and they really have done a really nice design with this phone, but I don't know, there's something about just how this plastic feels, and I mean, maybe call me crazy, but for me, I much rather prefer holding this plastic phone. I don't know what it is about it, but just the smoothness or the round edges, I don't know. I kind of just like how it feels in my hand, and so, you know, from an overall sort of external look and feel, my choice is with the 5C. But again, certainly nothing wrong with the 5S. I think they've stuck with a really good design. You know, some people would say, well, they would rather have a new design every year, and maybe Apple will do that again one day. But for now, they're still sticking with a sort of 2-year upgrade cycle with their design refresh. And so if you've seen the 5, you've seen the 5S. So how do these phones differ? I mean, if you're trying to decide maybe to go from Android to Apple, or from Windows Phone to Apple, or from nothing to your first smartphone, well, do you want to buy the 5C or do you want to buy the 5S? I mean, what are you supposed to pick? You know, how do they differ? Well, the biggest things Apple sort of tout are 64-bit chip in their A7, which is a new chip. This is the A6 chip in here. So they claim that it's faster, they claim that it's future-proof. It's a lot of marketing too with the 64-bit stuff, but it is their new generation chip in the 5S, and so it likely is faster. And when I say likely, it's because I don't really notice that much of a difference between the two phones. I mean, again, this isn't a benchmark test. This isn't objective data that you can write numbers down with. This is just usability and how the phones behave in my hand. As an example, we'll launch this Deer Hunter game to just talk about the speed of these two phones, and we'll just see here which one loads faster. Again, 5S is going to be faster than the 5C. That makes sense because it's a new graphics chip, it's a new CPU as well. So, you know, I mean, you definitely have speed increases in the 5S over the 5C, or basically the 5. And so you will see speed difference. But when you're talking about sort of overall usability of the phone, between apps and, you know, calling, texting, typing, that kind of thing, you don't really notice the speed difference. I mean, yes, it's faster, but it's not a night and day difference. It's not something that is going to blow your mind when you come from using this phone to go to using this phone. Of course, the other big thing that Apple has talked about is this new fingerprint scanner here that they've put in. It basically reads the underlying layers of skin and your fingerprint information in order to use things like the App Store to authenticate purchases, as well as to get into and unlock the phone. As an example, if we press the home buttons on both these guys, I've set up my thumbprint on here, and if you just press your thumb, the phone will unlock. And that is pretty cool, I must say. It's fast, it's reliable. It definitely does sometimes fail, so it's not 100%. You know, if I put my phone or my finger on here, sometimes it'll say, nope, that doesn't work, try again. And usually what'll happen is I'll lift my thumb up, try again, and it will get it on the second or third time. So again, it's not 100%, but it's darn close, and it does work pretty well. It's nice to not have to enter your password every time to go in your phone when you can just use your finger. I think that's pretty neat. Is it something revolutionary, like Apple likes to say? I doubt it. I mean, maybe if they could do some cool stuff where they can tie a lot of the security features to my thumbprint, and those thumbprint data are safe from places like the NSA and the government, so the government doesn't get my fingerprint data and everything I do with it, then maybe that would be cool. But anyway, that's a different conversation. But the other nice thing that they've done in this phone over the 5 is they've improved the camera. And so the camera has the same 8 megapixels as the 5, but what they've done is they've made the actual pixel size in the sensor bigger. I think they quoted 20% or 12% or something like that, to allow more light in. And they've also made the aperture of the lens is bigger as well, so that's going to let more light in to the sensor as well. So if you're into photography like I am, you typically like to have a nice camera in your phone. And you like to have that phone with you, and so you use this as your mobile camera whenever you're out and about. And so, for me, the camera, you know, it also has this new two LED different colors. There's a cool and a warm. We'll get into that in a second. But for me, the bump in the camera spec is probably the thing I was most looking forward to. And you know, to be honest, there's a noticeable difference, but it's very small. We'll go here and look at some of the photos I've taken just now. Again, they've talked about the camera having this dual LED flash, and so what we'll do is we'll look at these couple pictures I took using the flash, as well as differences in resolution, not resolution, but differences in noise and stuff. So here's a flash pic I actually took of myself. It's sort of hard to keep it stable, but again, 5C displayed on the 5C, 5S on the 5S. If you look at my face and the color, it certainly is warmer on this one than it is over here on this one. And this one's actually a little bit out of focus, and I'm not sure if that's because of the sort of, I mean, it's flash, so it shouldn't matter, but to me it seems like this one was easier, or excuse me, that 5S was easier to get a handheld shot, not looking at the screen, than it was on the 5C, and I don't know if that, again, this is very unscientific, but definitely cooler color tones here than here, but I mean, again, not very much different. If you look at these shots, I mean, they're really, really, really close. And if we go over to my night table, again, you can see the same thing. A little bit cooler on the 5. And when I say cooler, I mean more blue as opposed to more yellow. So if we look at some of the things with color in here, like these flies, if we zoom in, or if you look at the table, the color of the table, you'll see that it does look a little warmer in the 5S than it does on the 5C. Again, very unscientific, but the dual LED flash is doing something. Is it a completely revolutionary, new, awesome thing? I don't really think so. I think it's more maybe marketing than anything else. I mean, these pictures in this phone are still pretty darn good. But again, onto the camera. We'll just look at a couple other shots here. Here's some shots of my shirt rack. You know, if I zoom in really close on these, I can see a hair bit more detail on the 5S than I can on the 5C. I can see a hair bit more noise in the 5C than I can on the 5S. It's not that, they're very, very, very close. Again, if we zoom in here, and this is going to be super hard for you guys to see as well, but the point is that this 5C, or the 5 for that matter, the camera is really pretty darn good. And they certainly have improved it in the 5S, and so it is an upgrade. Is it a huge upgrade like Apple would like you to believe? Probably not. But the camera is a little bit nicer in here, and so again, Apple likes to do things in little tiny increments, and again, they've done a little tiny increment in the camera, and yes, is it better? Is it really that much of a big difference? Probably not. So in terms of software, you know, both these phones are running iOS 7, which is the new software from Apple. You know, it's this flat look. They've gone and done away with this, you know, fake felt and stitching and shadows and blue bubbly aqua stuff that's of the past. And, you know, all the icons look sort of, I don't know if childish and toy-like is the right word, but just flat. You know, and honestly, I'd have to say that I'm a fan. I mean, I like the sort of changes that they've done in iOS 7. It's going to be very hard for me to keep my Android bias out of this video because I do use Android probably more than I do use any other operating system. But I am a fan of change, and I am a fan of improvements. And iOS 7, in my opinion, is an improvement. I like that. I like what they've done visually. I like what they've done in terms of the software changes. This is not a review of iOS 7. I'm not going to go into details. This is a review between these two phones. Again, they're both running iOS 7, so they're both going to have the same user experience, except for the thumbprint reader on this one allowing you to do other things built into the OS that the 5C doesn't allow you to do. So I want to talk a little bit now about my closing thoughts and some advice for people that are looking to buy this phone. You know, in all honesty, the differences between the 5S and the 5 aren't that substantial, and I think you'd be crazy if you were going to go out and buy a 5S to replace your iPhone 5. I think you're either a fanboy and need to have everything that's new and great about Apple the moment it comes out, or you just like spending money, and both those reasons are fine. But, you know, for me, this is not that big of an upgrade from the 5. I don't think, again, it's a great phone. It's Apple's best phone they've ever made, but is it that much of a difference between the 5? Probably not. The 5C, on the other hand, if you think about it this way, it's a totally different design change, you know, from everything that you've seen with Apple already. They've never come out with a sort of plastic, colorful case like this. And so, you know, for me, the 5C with the plastic back and the new iOS 7, I actually prefer this over the 5S. I sort of wish they would have put the guts of the 5S in the 5C and then done something else, or left the 5 and, you know, discounted the price of the 5. I really like grabbing this phone. I don't know. It's just different. I'm a fan of change and improvement and advancement in technology, and new things get me excited, whereas this sort of still feels like the iPhone 5, and to me still kind of feels a year old. And so I actually like this phone. I like the 5C better than the 5S, you know, for different reasons, for the sort of aesthetic of it. I do like the guts of the 5S a little bit better because of the camera and the speed and that sort of thing. But if you're trying to decide between these two phones, if you've never used Apple and you want to go down that road, let me insert my Android bias here and say, don't do it. No, but you know, picking between these two phones, you gotta just choose one. You know, if I were going to suggest the person that they're going to go out and buy a brand new Apple iPhone, I'd say go get the 5S, unless you absolutely have to have some color. Most people are going to put a case on this anyway, and you can put a colorful case on it and be done. But if you want to be a little bit flashy and you want to have something that sort of stands out from everything else, it's a cool phone. It's a good phone. It's fast. It's nice. I hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Don't forget to check out my other stuff on YouTube, and be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.